Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. My guest today is my buddy Barry C. He is in acquisitions for the federal government. Currently in his mid-40s, he's in his 4th home, a little bit of a DIY kind of guy. Barry, thanks for coming on. How you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on the Orange Hammer. So as I mentioned, you're on your 4th house. When did you buy your first one?
I was in my mid-20s, was in a relationship for several years, and moving out of being the roommates with high school buddies and taking the next step towards adulthood.
Gotcha. So it just was like the next phase. And how did you go about finding a house back then?
I contacted a local realtor who happened to be a friend of the family and somebody from the neighborhood. I grew up in a rural part of western North Carolina, pre-internet days.
Gotcha.
So back then you found houses by the little real estate books that you would pick up in the convenience store.
So did you use that said little book, or was it really the friend of the family connection?
We used that book. Of course, I had the MLS back then.
Yeah.
And so, once you kind of decided it was time to start looking for a house, then, you could go and look at that book. But, the way that publication works, for magazines, a lot of that was dated information. It may be 30 days old by the time it would actually come out on newsstands.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, because for me, just because of our age difference, like I only know MLS as an internet website. So I would never think of like waiting for a publication to come, because houses go the day they're listed nowadays. So you could get a publication that's 30 days old and that house was gone 29 days ago. Right. It's just a waste of time to even drive by them.
So back then, even, so we're talking 20 years ago. The MLS was actually a hard copy book. You'd go to the realtor's office and sit in her office, and I think it was sorted by price. So you had your price range of what you're looking for, and you just kind of look in that section, and
right.
and of hard copy, listed. I think it may have actually had color pictures, but
Yeah.
you'd go through and you'd dog ear the houses that you wanted to look at, and she would make phone calls and make appointments.
So that first house, did you do a lot of work to that house?
Ended up, I think that house was, what we traditionally consider a starter home.
Yeah.
It was a little three bedroom, 2 bath brick ranch, probably about 1,200 square feet plus or minus. I think.
Did you kind of go into it? You just mentioned the term starter home, great term. Did you kind of know that going in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was it was me and my girlfriend. We're both I was 26 and she was 29, or she was 30, and so we were both first time homeowners. We shacked up for a few years. We got married a couple years later, but that was kind of the intention. So we were looking for something specifically, you know, for kind of also thinking ahead to resale value.
Okay.
You could get houses that were smaller, 2 bedroom, 1 bath houses, maybe 800 or 900 square feet. You could get 3 bedroom, 1 bath houses. It seemed like kind of the demand was, or the rule of thumb was you definitely wanted at least a second bathroom.
Right.
So that was kind of where you wanted to be, is that at some point, we're going to, sell this house, or, maybe upgrade, or, we may stay there forever. We were actually the second owner of the house. The house was built in about 1965, and the original builders of the house had raised kids there, and they were now adults, and they had passed away, and the kids didn't want to have anything to do with it. So that's how we ended up kind of getting that house as really the second owners.
Gotcha.
But you never know what happens in life. We got divorced a couple of years later, and so that kind of made it easier to
That
sell
led to
that
selling
house
the house.
and
Yeah.
kind of move on. Yeah.
So that, I guess, perfectly segues into house number 2.
Yeah.
Where did you move? Similar area or a completely different part of the world? Or
No, I actually I relocated. I'm from Western North Carolina, and 2008 happened, which depending on your age, it may have affected you more, more or less. But the economy, they talk about the housing bubble.
yeah,
So the economy, you're like, yeah, housing bubble popped. The economy really went down. Unemployment went up. I found myself recently divorced and out of work and looking for a new job. And
have you sold the house at this
yeah,
point?
I did not. I still own the house. I ended up having a friend who had also lost their job in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. They had trouble finding work, and him and his wife actually took jobs as contractors in Iraq for a year.
Okay.
So we still had the I guess Gulf War II going on in 2008, 2009 timeframe. So they went to Iraq. They were renting a condo in Raleigh, and asked if I would keep an eye on it while they were gone. They were going to be gone a year, and so housing became a non-issue because I had access to housing in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and so that gave me another area where I could start looking for employment. I was able to. I lucked out and was able to change careers into my current career field,
Right.
in this Raleigh, North Carolina area. So I ended up selling house number 1 to my parents for payoff at the time. So I didn't really make any money on that one, but it kind of got me out of out from under that house, which actually worked out fine. It was definitely a different market back then than it is now.
Oh yeah.
And so, because they were downsizing, they were getting a little older. I grew up kind of out in the country on 3 acres, and they couldn't just maintain it anymore. And, I had the first house was in town, in a small town kind of, area I grew up. And it was like I said, it was a ranch, no stairs, very small yard.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly for them as they got a little older.
It was low maintenance.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to the Raleigh area, met my eventual wife number 2, and we, she had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and she was renting at the time, and so we eventually bought house number 2 together.
Okay.
And it was a really old farmhouse out in a small town called Middlesex, North Carolina, which is east of Raleigh.
Not too far.
Population of less than 700 people. 2 acres in town. I think it's kind of one of those houses where you could tell it had been added on through the years.
Right, like you can see extensions
as the family expanded, and they added bedrooms, and there was some of the I think the original part of the house was built early 1900s. There was some still old knob and post electrical wiring with the 2-prong outlets.
Oh man, that's tough.
But portion of the house had modern 3-prong outlets. So
based on what decade it may or may not have been built in.
That's exactly right.
So how do you find that house? Does wife number 2 have a realtor, or do you have a realtor? Does like your friend that you're in the condo recommend a realtor?
She the wife she worked at NC State in the veterinary school.
Okay.
And the veterinary school, they have a lot of like postgraduate equivalent veterinarians that are going for specialties like surgery specialties, or more advanced past just regular veterinary school. They'll come in for 2-3 years at a time to further their studies or tweak their specialties. There was a lady,
almost like going to like a grad school or something.
Yep.
Yeah, I got you.
Going to grad school, or if you're in medical school and you graduate medical school, you're a doctor. But if you want to be a cardiac surgeon, then you're going to go and you're going to get additional training in that specialty.
Right.
So she worked there. There was a realtor that had kind of gotten in and became highly recommended for the students as they're coming in. They're going to be there for 3 years, so they're buying houses, and then they're going to graduate in their specialty, and then they're going to be moving off somewhere else. And so
that 3-year chunk is long enough for these people to not want to rent. And so they're like, okay, let's buy a house knowing that we're selling it in 3 years when we're done. And your wife number 2's department at that veterinary school basically had their token realtor.
They kind of had a person who came recommended, because that's that's a lot of business has to do with networking.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of your in. And then to this point, we're talking 2010-ish. So you had online websites. You could actually do some online shopping for houses. It's kind of like, how do you end up from Raleigh, Durham, metropolitan areas to small town Middlesex? My wife in her previous marriage and years before, she had lived in that area because she had a job working in Wilson, North Carolina.
Gotcha.
So she was kind of familiar with that area. So that's how we ended up there.
Good barbecue out there.
Yeah. There's good barbecue everywhere.
Well, that's a fact, but I specifically have been to a spot in Wilson on this little barbecue road trip I went on, and Wilson had one that stood out.
Okay.
But anyway.
And I think that place is actually closed now. I think I know what you're talking about.
It's possible.
Yeah. So we lived there a couple years.
You do any work to that house? You said that she had 2 kids, so obviously you need a slightly bigger spot. You need at least 3, maybe even 4 bedrooms.
It was 3 bedrooms. It was small. Since it was an older house, it didn't really have any closet space. But it was a quiet town. It was a good place to raise kids. What was really odd is, we had 2 acres. It was actually in the town limits. So if you're in a town limits versus not in a town limits, then you're kind of restricted based on ordinances of what you can and can't do.
2 acres is a lot, though, to be inside town limits. Just like as a general kind of rule of thumb, like that's a nice sized chunk of land.
Yeah. And we were just inside, like basically right on the border. We could sit on our front porch and overlook a 18-acre field that, depending on the year, was soybeans or corn.
Right.
That was, I think, also inside the town limits. So, we're talking rural, small town, North Carolina.
Like you said, 700 people.
farming community. She decided that, and I think was becoming popular at the time. She wanted some backyard chickens. And so, she went and Tractor Supply during chick days and bought some chickens.
Yeah.
Or little, day old chicks. And
I have gone with my dad to do that, so I know what that's like.
And so we got the chickens. Kind of a fun fact, if the listeners don't already know, it takes about 6 or 7 months before chickens will actually start laying eggs. So we raised them inside in the largest Rubbermaid tub you could find, and when they got big enough where they could get out of that, then it was time to go outside. So we had a little chicken coop that we had built out of an old 76 model pop-up camper. That we had gotten off of Craigslist.
I like
a
recycle, reuse. I like it. For $100.
Yeah, $100. And
I don't think you could build a chicken coop for $100 out of lumber. So
yeah, so we converted this pop-up camper into a chicken coop, and every put them out in our 2-acre yard, and every couple weeks, I'd go out there and I'd kind of pull that thing around the yard to give them some fresh grass to eat.
Oh, so you made a chicken tractor.
It was basically a chicken tractor.
Yeah. Okay. So for those who don't know, a chicken tractor is there's no bottom. So the chicken are encaged, but they eat the grass, and then you move it so that they have fresh grass to eat, so that you don't just let them die or just murder one section of lawn.
That's right. Yeah. And it spreads the fertilizer around, and they eat bugs. So they can, eat the bugs. And
did you have any issues with? I know you said small town, farming town. I feel like not a big deal, but you said you're in city limits. Do you have any issues with having chickens inside city limits or town limits?
Well, actually, we did. That was some foreshadowing there. Good job. Yeah, we had a mysterious knock at the door one day, and the town mayor / town manager showed up at the door and was like, you guys are not allowed to have chickens. You need to get rid of those chickens. And of course, we didn't know who he was. We'd only been out there a couple years at the time. And it's like, who are you?
Small town. Does he even have like some official laminated town ID?
No, it's just some dude just shows up at your house.
Does he have Town of Middlesex written on his car, or does he just roll up in a Ford?
Of course not. He has like a Ford Focus. He's using his personal vehicle so he can build a town for mileage. That's probably why they had really high taxes. But
probably.
But so apparently there was an ordinance in town about having no livestock in town limits.
Chickens are classified as livestock.
Chickens are classified as livestock.
I thought that meant like cows, pigs, horses.
I guess all of those. Yeah, all of those too. So they had an ordinance against it. At that time, Raleigh allowed backyard chickens. They actually had something called Tour de Coop, where you could go around parade of homes and look at people downtown Raleigh and look at their fancy chicken coops.
That's awesome.
And you know, there were other towns of, you know, similar size. Cary, North Carolina, very, you know, you can't have a sign that's not brown or green. You know, they're pretty strict on their appearance and what they allow. They allowed backyard chickens. There were other small towns in our area who were, they either had ordinances or they were in the process of passing ordinances to allow backyard chickens. So we tried to work with the county or work with the town and say, okay, we understand there's this ordinance that, you know, preventing us to have chickens in town. But let's work together and let's just change the ordinance. It's not like we're trying to, you know, build a chicken house,
right,
with, you know, a couple 100,000 chickens.
You guys have a handful of chickens here
right.
for some personal eggs.
We got six. Yeah, we got 6 hens so we can get fresh eggs.
Right.
You know, where you're not slaughtering them. We don't have roosters. You know, so we kind of went through that process of, you know, here's some sample ordinances. Here's what we propose. You know, we got on the schedule for a town meeting and started to propose a change for this ordinance,
like a city council meeting.
City council,
yeah.
Yep, it's equivalent of that, and basically, you know, open for public comment and basically just the town, you know, they had no interest in actually, you know, broaching that subject, and so whenever.
So what's that city, like when you say they have no interest in broaching this, like, do they just not even let you speak? Do they let you speak and they're just like, okay, we vote, and they vote no? Or?
Well, so they let you speak because there's public comment period.
Right.
So you're, you know, in freedom of speech, you can say whatever you want. But in order for a vote to happen, you got to have a motion and you got to have a second. So
someone else has to agree with you.
Well, somebody on the board.
On the board.
Okay. Somebody on the board.
Not in the crowd.
5 or 6. No.
Okay.
You know, because really don't care what the crowd has to say. So I think there was 5, maybe 7 members on the board. So basically you need a motion and a second. And so there was somebody made a motion, hey, we're going to vote to change this ordinance, this livestock ordinance, and just nobody seconded the motion. And so then it dies,
dies
like
right
a lack of second.
Right.
And then just goes away. So they don't even have to vote yes or no because it just hadn't got there
And
yet.
you can't like do that again at the next meeting.
I mean, I guess you probably could go through the process, but
you were like, this isn't worth it.
You're beating the dead horse on that.
Right.
So
do you then have to get rid of them?
Yeah, so we had to get rid of them.
Give them to a buddy, I hope,
and we gave them to a friend who actually lived in the town of Zebulon, and the town of Zebulon allowed chickens, and so they
which isn't that far away.
It's not. It's basically like the next town over, and they so they chicken sat for us for a little while, and we just said, "F it, we're moving." So that's how we get to house number 3.
Okay. So you basically go from house 2 to house 3, if we're going to boil it down, all comedy aside, because you love your freaking chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's selling house 2?
It's not only the chickens. So it became, you know, we kind of like to do our own thing. Right. And so,
don't tread on me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so it's a matter of, you know, when you're in a town, for example, you know, you've got your state laws and your county laws, and then you got town ordinances. If you end up in a neighborhood, it's got a HOA. Well, now you got HOA rules.
Just another level of
another level
rules,
of like somebody telling you what to do. So, so when we started looking again, we went back to the same realtor that we'd used for house number 2 because we like really enjoyed working with her. I thought that she did a really good job.
That definitely answers a follow-up question that I forgot, because I like to ask, you know, would you use again? Yeah. Did they, you know, supply a good service? And if you want to give them a shout out, feel free.
Yeah. Nancy Briggs in Morrisville, North Carolina.
There you go. Anybody in Morrisville, give Nancy a call.
Give Nancy Briggs a call. So
you go back to her to both Does she help you sell house 2 and find house 3? All in one.
She helps us sell house 2 and buy house 3, and she did an excellent job because, like I said, her office was in, as far as I know, it's still in Morrisville, North Carolina. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of developments in the area. You know, when you're selling a house in a development where all 300 houses are exactly the same, you know, it's really easy to get comps, you know, and it's really easy to like, hey, I want to live in this area or this school district. And it's like, okay, here's your four houses to choose from.
How many years did you stay in house 2?
I think it was 5-6 years.
And how old are wife number 2's kids when you're looking at for house 3?
At that time, they were in elementary school.
Okay, so they're still very much living with you in a factor when you're, so do you, out of curiosity, just to break it down into pieces, do you find house 3 first before you think about listing house 2?
Yes.
Okay, so you go basically on the hunt.
Yeah, we go on the hunt. Okay. Basically, some of our criteria.
School districts.
No, it wasn't that. It was not in an HOA.
Right. Okay. No restrictions.
Not in the city limits.
Gotcha.
And minimum 10 acres.
Okay, and those are all the ways that you can make sure that you can basically do whatever you want, because that 10 acre, at least in North Carolina, I don't know, I don't want to speak for other states because I don't know the laws, but I recently bought over 10 acres for a similar reason, where when you get over 10 acres, you can basically do whatever you want as long as you're 100 feet from your neighbor's building, and you can even start your own small business as long as you don't violate like a noise decimal or something like that. So you can you really do have a lot of freedom.
Well, there's another thing too. Has to do with agricultural exemption. Yes. Agricultural exemption to building codes. Actually, when I was living in house number 2 on the 2 acres, I wanted a place to keep my tractor that I bought just specifically to move this chicken tractor around the yard. And it was, one of those metal Quonset hut buildings that come in little sections.
Yeah.
Whatever it's officially called.
I think they're called carports, but
but not one of the little cheap ones, but like the actual, Quonset hut. They come in like 2-foot sections. And,
right.
Yeah. We wanted to put one of those up, and what we found out, because a lot of farmers, they have them. They have, really big spans. You could park your tractors and combines in there.
Oh, yeah.
They can be enclosed. They could be garage buildings.
Might as well be an aircraft hangar.
You could put they come that size where you can, use it for that. So what we found out was, because we were in town limits, you don't get agricultural exemption in any town limits. That's just recently in North Carolina been changed within the past couple months.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
But if you're a farm, if you're doing agriculture activity, then basically you're exempt from getting building permits, and you don't have to build anything to code. And where that becomes important is, say you want to put up a pole barn. Well, there's nothing in the code that says this is how you put up a pole barn, right? So then you got to get an engineer involved to stamp your plans and say this pole barn is, I certify this, I have these are engineered plans. Throughout the Midwest or, Eastern North Carolina, there's pole barns everywhere. People get old telephone poles and put up pole barns. And people aren't living there, that sort of thing.
Guess what? They stand for 100 years.
That's right. They're up.
Yeah.
So what I ran into is, because I didn't qualify for an exemption, I had to go back. I had to get actually engineered plans, which is basically the same plans that I had for this building.
Right.
But it cost me $600 to stamp it. And then, of course, that didn't include, that was just the building. It didn't include the foundation that it was going to go on. So then I had to find another engineer to actually draw me a foundation plan, which are, footers and stamp those. And so then by the time I ended up with plans and permits to actually put this building up that I think I paid $4,000 for, I paid like another $1,000 just for paperwork before I even, moved one.
It's a 25% increase just to build what you already were going to build.
Right.
Yeah. Which is basically a Lego kit.
Right.
In this particular case.
Like in this particular case.
You're buying a metal silo. Yeah. I mean, basically.
Right.
You just piece it together.
And, so that was basically it, and it's just because the property line was on the wrong side of the town limits, basically. So it didn't have anything to do with an actual engineering change or an actual function or actual safety of this actual construction.
Right. So do you find that 10-acre dream house 3?
So we do. And also, at that time I I worked in Research Triangle Park. I had about a 45-minute commute. So
from Middlesex, you mean?
From Middlesex.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So from Middlesex. So I, also, one of the criteria was, we wanted to stay within, an hour of my workplace.
Right.
And so, our Nancy Briggs, our realtor, would be great.
Shout out Nancy.
Another shout out to Nancy. She would meet us. We were looking at houses in Middlesex. We were looking at houses in Oxford.
How many houses do you think you look at?
We probably looked at 10.
Over a span of how long?
Yeah, maybe 2 months.
Okay.
Month or 2 months.
And when you finally say, okay, this is the one, does it need work, or is it basically move-in ready?
It was basically move-in ready.
Okay. And
the house we ended up with, when we looked at a couple others and they didn't quite meet all of our criteria. She drove us all around within, an hour radius of RTP. Well, that means from one end to the other was like 2 hours. I mean, she went above and beyond. She was hauling us everywhere. And usually she just, hauls people around Morrisville.
right.
But, and so we found this house. It was move-in ready. It'd kind of recently been redone and, repainted, new carpet, and new flooring. So, and of course, not like today's market where if you want it, you got to put in an offer today. We were going to think about it for a day or so. And
right.
We had a couple other houses to look at. And so probably,
just a lot less rush.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big decision on kind of what you're going to do. So we took 3 or 4 days and molded over and said, I think, this will work. It kind of meets our criteria. Basically, this will do.
Right.
For what we want. And
checks enough boxes.
Yeah. Checks enough boxes. And so we actually went to go put an offer in on it. And it was no longer on the market.
In that 4 days.
Yeah, that 4 days.
That's all it took.
And so we're like, oh, okay. So we just figured that, we missed out on it.
Right.
So we went back, we looked at a couple other places, and we had kind of a choice too. I think it was on about 8 acres or so. Little older house. It needed some updating. But it was pretty neat little house, a little layout. But it was being sold as is. I think it had been vacant for a while. So it didn't have any power. It had a well and septic.
Just to clarify, it didn't have any power. The power was turned off.
Okay.
Yep. So there was power run.
Yeah, it was there. Yeah, it was there. It was there.
So when you go to look at it, the lights don't work.
The lights don't work. You can't see if the water works or test the water with the well. Somebody had stolen the AC units because that's a big thing.
Oh, right, because it's on a well and the well pump is electric and the power to the whole
the whole
so you can't even see if the water. You can't turn the sink on.
Can't turn the sink on.
Wow.
And
so they stole the AC unit.
It was 2 units. It was going to need 2 AC units because they had been stolen.
Was this in Durham?
And I think this was actually a bank-owned property, as a matter of fact. So So they were. It was sold as is, and as a, give us our best and final offer. We've got multiple offers on this, and we're not going to have the electricity turned on.
Right, truly is as is.
It was a crapshoot.
It's basically a bank foreclosure.
Right. Yeah, it was a crapshoot, and so it was kind of like that risk reward. And we're looking for a place to live in. We're not
right. This doesn't fit at all. I mean, you
investors,
have kids, and this is not your jam.
Right. And so, so we're like, well, worst case scenario, we got two AC units that we've got to, put in, how much is that going to cost? We've got to, the garage had a detached garage. It had a leaky roof. Well, that's going to need to be repaired. Worst case scenario, we got to have a well drilled.
And where do you start? How do you start coming up with these numbers? Do you have a friend who's a contractor? Does the realtor have a contact who's a contractor who's giving you some numbers?
Yeah, we'd call and try to, it's hard to get contractors to give you numbers over the phone.
Yes.
And so at least what I try to at least get them to do, and I think they're kind of understanding is, look, I'm not going to hold you to it. If you tell me it's 3,000 and it's really 32, I'm not going to be like, look, you said it was going to be 3. I'm just trying to get a scope. Is this 300, 3,000, 10,000?
Right.
25,000. If I'm thinking it's 5, but you say, I'm not even coming out for 20, just tell me that. Right. So,
right.
And so usually when you put it that way, then people kind of be like, well, it's 4 to 7.
So you just got
5 to
the most rough numbers that a contractor who didn't even come to look at it just gave you over the phone. So they're nothing numbers, but they're at least numbers you can argue at a real estate transaction with.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, it's a bank. They're not negotiating. It's the, the best and final offer.
So do you go in on this house?
So we made an offer on it, and it was a conservative number that we didn't get. So I don't know, how much somebody had to pay for. They didn't come back. It just wasn't enough. So, we're a little frustrated. We've lost out on house number 2. So we're back to the drawing board. We're kind of looking. So the first house we made an offer on and wasn't on the market anymore.
Poof
comes back after like 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks.
Right. So something happened during the closing process that didn't work out.
So I didn't even contact my realtor. I just contacted their realtor directly, and just as a phone call, and said, hey, what's up with the house? Like, I'm interested in it. We were going to put an offer in on it. There was, but it wasn't available. I'm going to have to get a loan. So if there's an issue where
what's he say? Is there issues?
It won't appraise. If it fails inspection, if there's something, just tell me, so I'm not wasting people's time. And I think it was it had been on the market for a while, and they had reduced the price and didn't want to reduce it again. And at least what I was told from my realtor was, if you take it off the market and then it kind of resets and it'll reappear as like a new listing. So it's a completely psychological.
Yeah, it's trying to like regenerate buzz, basically. Right. So there wasn't really anything wrong. It just had been on there for a long time.
It had been on there for a while and wasn't
sellers
moving.
Were refusing to admit that it wasn't going to sell for whatever they were listing it for.
So it actually worked out very well because they had taken it off and then they put it back on as a price drop. So $20,000 less than what it was asking for.
So you go after that, and do you get it?
Yeah, so we ended up getting that house.
So the dream house that you really kind of wanted comes back, and you snag it.
Comes back, and so we made a full price offer at their new lower price, and said, all right, we'll take it here. I think we actually asked for some closing costs, and so I think we paid. I think they were asking $185 after a price cut. And we asked for $189, and them paying $4,000 closing. Right. So it's just a math problem on which side of the ledger it is.
So now you've got house 3, you sell house 2. Now you've got all this land. These restrictions. Okay, and so what happens for the jump to go from house 3 to house 4? Which house 4 is current house?
Yeah. Divorced.
Okay. Well, that's
time number 2.
That's okay. Well, we don't even have to elaborate. Okay. Divorced. Okay.
Divorced.
House
Time number
4.
2. Yep.
Okay.
And so
do you do any work to house number 3 before you get divorced?
We it was pretty set up. We didn't really do a whole lot of work to it. We did add what we had normally traditionally recognized as a carport, one of the little cheap metal buildings.
Gotcha. You didn't have to worry about it.
We had it parked out in the middle of the field because the new house had 18 acres and it was fenced in and used to have horses on it and so we'd gotten some goats and some cows and
nice.
So and
had
plenty of chickens, had all of that, and so I
did you go and get back your chickens?
We got our chickens back. Yeah. And, yep. So we had a little hobby farm going on, but the ex-wife got all of that. So I ended up in an apartment in Morrisville. Back in Morrisville, I went from hour and 15 or so minute commute to the office to 8 minutes from door to door. And so living in an apartment, and then 6 months later, COVID shuts the world down.
Right.
So, being kind of newly single and trying to date as a middle-aged man and
COVID.
Internet dating and then COVID, and it was just kind of a nightmare. And I was content in my apartment for a little while, and then decided that maybe I could waiting on the economy to crash and the prices to go down, and then I would swoop in, maybe buy up some multifamily housing, maybe a duplex, live in a house. Yeah, we're still waiting on that.
Still waiting on that crash that doesn't look like it's coming.
That's right. And then, the townhouses across the street from my apartment complexes that were, $250,000 whenever I moved in are now selling for $305,000. And this was 18 months ago. I don't even know what they are now. But, and I'm like, that's for a townhouse with a 1-car garage. Like my previous house I paid $185,000 for, and it was 2,800 square feet and 18 acres. Now it was out in the middle of nowhere, but, it was pretty good size house. It was a pretty good deal.
So you combo go, I'm not going to keep waiting, and I'm sick of giving a landlord some money. So I'm
sick of being stuck in an apartment.
Yeah.
And, because
need to spread out a little bit more.
Got to spread out. Even, we had COVID restrictions, your bars, restaurants were closed. It's hard to do social activities, especially in the winter. But even like the apartment complex, we've got a pool, but the pool's closed because of COVID,
and the gym's probably closed.
And the gym's closed. Yeah. All the gyms were closed,
and you can't use the grill. And
you can't use the grill, and you're not allowed to have your own grill because it's fire hazard. And I'm like, I don't understand why we can't use the grill.
Reserve that thing with an hour break or something or whatever.
I think the 500-degree temps will kill anything that's on there.
Let's avoid what COVID gets killed by what conversation on this podcast.
But that was just kind of this culmination of I need my own space.
Right.
So, and I don't know that prices are coming back down. So let's kind of start looking.
Do we go back to Nancy is my question.
I do not. And the only reason I do not go back to Nancy is I have a new girlfriend, and she has a high school friend who is a realtor.
Gotcha.
And he had just helped her sell her house in Chapel Hill.
Cool.
For $25,000 over asking.
So I do not have to go back and edit out the Nancy shout out. We can keep it in here.
You can keep it in there.
Okay,
she does
cool.
a great job. Yeah. This is the first time I'd ever heard of this. And we're talking December 2020.
Right. Over asking. Those words
over
don't
asking.
exist.
Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And so
you said $25,000,
25 grand over asking.
Over asking.
Yeah. And it was like, here, take this deal. It's like, I don't know. It's only been on the market like one day. They were the first people that looked at it. 13 people looked at it the one day, and it hit on Friday. And you have an open house on Sunday. You should probably wait till Monday. but she took that offer, and it's a, you just never can tell, right? So
It's true.
on anything at auction.
I mean, life is a giant
did what
dice
you
roll, so real estate's no different.
But yeah, so just because it was kind of a more personal, friend kind of relationship,
Right.
and
does he do a good job finding you a house?
Yeah, I mean, I found one.
Yeah.
It was actually a house I'd seen on MLS. I wasn't really that impressed, and I'd kind of looked at a couple others. The market in our area is starting to get hot to where things wouldn't necessarily stay on the market a few days, maybe a week, and my criteria now, I was basically looking. I didn't need all the land. It's not something I could take care of by myself. I got a full-time job, but I did want something non-HOA. Was still important to me.
Yes.
I've heard plenty of horror stories on that, and I wanted something where I could just entertain. Kind of an extrovert, and then I've got a pretty good social circle and friends, and so that was kind of my criteria. And
You need a good hosting house.
Yeah, I wanted to host. If it had a pool, that was a bonus, but not a necessarily a requirement.
It did have a pool.
If it did, that would have been great.
Did the house have a pool?
It did not.
No.
So that was basically the only thing that it doesn't have. So maybe we'll add that later when prices come down a little bit. But yeah, we looked at a couple places, and I'd gone out of town for a weekend. The house I ended up buying, house that eventually became house number 4. It was, I remember it was Super Bowl Sunday, and I'd been out of town for the weekend and just got in, and I got people coming over to watch the game at my apartment. And the realtor says, "Hey, they're doing an open house over here. Like, let's go look at that house." And I was like, "Man, I'm tired. I just got back in town. I got people coming over. Open houses 1 to 3. It's like 2:45. We're not going to get there in time." And
right.
So he made a call, and we can still go look at it. And so I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, this could probably work. It wasn't a, oh my God, I have to have this house.
So you don't get wowed.
I don't get wowed.
Okay.
It had been on the market for about a year.
That's usually a red flag.
There had been several price cuts. So it was kind of still, let me think about it a day or two. And cause I didn't want to be desperate. I didn't want to overpay. And I'll also kind of look at it and say, well, at this price point, what else can I get at, comparable? I mean, that's how
right.
that's how I make my decisions. And, so ended up, putting an offer in, I think maybe 20 under asking. And they just flat out just said no, not even a counter or any of that stuff. So then I came back with, 10 under asking. And then, and so then I think they countered there, and then we kind of did some negotiation, and I got it about $5,000 under asking price. So, and then there was, maybe some closing in there, and there was a couple repairs they had to do and that sort of thing after we got a home inspection. So that's how I ended up in house number 4.
So you mentioned they did a few small repairs. What in house number now? Your current house, your hosting Barry. What has hosting Barry done to the house?
Well, before part of the inspection and the closing process, we'd actually found out, this house actually has a finished walkout basement. We don't have a whole lot of basements in North Carolina.
No.
So it depends on your part of the country whether it's they have them or not. But the lot's kind of on a slope, and it kind of fits the terrain. Well, we found during inspection that the downstairs bathroom actually had a leak, and so it was leaking the waste into the carpet in the basement, and so they had to, and you can't. There's not a crawl space, so they had to bust out the tile and go from the top side to fix this leak, and so they had some work to do there. And so then I actually instead of actually having carpet put back down in the basement, I actually paid the difference between whatever the carpet costs versus LVP. So I had LVP put down in the.
So this is all work that is discovered upon home inspection, and this is work that's being done not on your dime.
Not on my dime, other than the upgrade of the LVP.
Right.
And
the
so
LVP, just for those who don't know, is like a much more water durable product, much better, smarter choice for a basement where, there's potential for always a water leak in a basement.
Right. And I guess it's like the new laminate flooring or the Pergo.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty durable.
Kind of a hot thing now.
Yeah.
So, so I paid for the upgrade there. So I've been in this house, not quite 18 months. It had new flooring throughout, carpet, and I guess they call it sheet vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
I call it linoleum.
Yeah.
So I had linoleum and or sheet vinyl and carpet, kind of throughout, and it was freshly painted, builder beige. So since I've been there,
it's my favorite color, builder beige.
I've had, because you're a builder, why not builder gray, agreeable gray. But
it's just like the DMV wall color.
So I've had, I wasn't a big fan of the linoleum or the sheet vinyl.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is. It's definitely a budget decision.
Yeah, and it didn't fit the price point of the house. It's and so I actually paid to have the same flooring contractor who had done the flooring in the basement. I actually had them come back and actually do LVP flooring in the areas on the other floors that actually had this sheet vinyl.
So that answers how you went about finding that particular subcontractor. You already had, through the sellers who chose whoever they wanted to do, you were like, well, let me just keep that number. They did obviously they did a good enough job.
He did a good job, and the price is reasonable. And I've done that type of thing myself before, like on house number one. I put the Pergo down, that's the brand name, but I put that flooring down before, the floating floor. It's, it's not that difficult, but it is kind of tedious.
It's hands and knees time. That's just,
and I'm older now. It's different when you're in your 20s. I'm in my 40s. I feel like I'm in a point in life now that I'll pick and choose the projects that I want to do, and then if not, I'll just pay somebody.
Gotcha.
and so this is one where I just chose that I'm just going to pay somebody to do it.
Are there other projects? I know you said only, what you said, about 18 months in this new house.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other projects that you have employed somebody to do?
We I did some painting, and I paid somebody for painting.
And how do you find that painter?
I actually had sold a used washer and dryer, and it was a lady, and he had come with her to help her pick it up.
And he's a painter.
He's a painter. He does, kind of handyman stuff. He's a pressure washer and that sort of thing.
Once again, just the random network of life.
Yeah, so. It's you paint? Hey, come here and look, because I've got a 2-story foyer. Well, for one thing, I'm pretty handy. I can do a lot of stuff myself. I know how to swing a hammer. I've got nail guns and that sort of thing. I can't paint.
Yeah,
it's a mess. It's a wreck. I'll no matter how much tape I use or drop claws, it's a disaster.
I could build you a house. I don't paint.
Yeah. So
I have a painter.
My dad could do anything. My mom painted. Most of the females that have been in my life, they could paint, and so I just can't. But he came. I've got a 2-story foyer. I don't have ladders or scaffolds I don't have the tools for that, and also not the skill or the ability. So I just said, hey, well, while you're here,
price
painter, how much would that cost?
Gotcha.
And he gave me what I guess is a reasonable price. I didn't get 3 quotes, but I'm like, yeah, that'd be worth it to me, so I don't have to deal with it. So,
and he did a good job.
He did a good job, and I had him I was like, well, hell, while you're painting that, go ahead and paint down the hall, and when I get more money, I'll have you come back and paint some more, and just not to that point yet.
Gotcha. And anything else other than some painting that you've had that you've specifically hired professionals?
That
or not
was,
even professionals, just hired.
Well,
somebody.
so the other thing, the only other thing that I've actually had done in the 18 months is I did have one section of I guess it was a sunroom that had been added on the back of the house. I mean, it came with it. I didn't have that done, but it didn't have any gutter on it, and so so I did hire a roofing company to come and put a section of gutter on that.
And so, not to sound repetitive, but how do you find that roofing contractor? Do you get multiple bids? Did they do a good job? Would you hire them again?
So I would. Now it's the internet, right? Just go on the internet. I need a who does gutters, seamless gutters, and it's you start calling folks, and you call and you leave messages, and then some people don't call you back, and then some people do call you back, and then some people make an appointment to come and give you an estimate, but they never show, and so. The
quick way to thin them out, just like that.
Right. Yeah. I guess you just don't want it. But the guy that actually came out, he said he was going to be there at 8 a.m. and at 7:55 a.m. he was knocking on my door. I'm here, and so he gave me a quote and said this is it, and then we chatted about motorcycles for a while. He was a motorcycle guy, and I'm a motorcycle guy, and we had another 45-minute conversation, non-related to work, and I decided I like this guy, so you're hired.
Boom.
And then he just said, you're a contractor. I don't know how far behind you are, but he's behind. He's like, look, I just got to tell you right now, this will only take a couple of hours. It's just that I'm so far behind. It's going to be like 4 months.
4 months.
4 months.
Wow.
So I'm like, that's okay, no problem. And so, about 4 months go by, and I was like, I gave him one call. Guy answered, hey man, you hadn't forgot about me, have you? And he's like, no, I haven't forgot about you. You're right here in my stack. Got like 3 more down. As soon as we've got a guy in the area and we get to you, we'll give you a call. And about a week later, he gave me a call. He came out, had his guys come out. They did it in a couple hours. They did a good job.
Gotcha. There's something about, like, nobody wants to hear that you're 4 months out.
Right.
But there's something about that upfront brutality in the honesty department where you're just like, look, man, this is where it's at. This 2-hour job is just 4 months out. Can you wait 4 months or not? Right. I could tell you it'll be 2 weeks.
Right.
And then 2 days before the 2-week deadline, call you and ask for another 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And by the time you've realized I've done that 6 times, it's the same 4 months.
Right.
So, like, there's 2 ways to go about it. I am obviously, and you prefer that guy's method of just like, this is the reality. Like, can you handle the reality? If not, that's okay.
Right.
And some people don't want to do that.
Just got to be honest about it. Right. And so then that way the person can make a decision. I did have to have, I had some heat and air repairs that needed to be done.
Oh, okay. And so what was wrong with your HVAC system?
Actually, I've had 2 issues. I have 3 systems in the house, and I do have a home warranty.
3 systems?
Yes.
Is your house like extensions on extensions, and they added systems?
It's 3 levels, and so there's one for each level.
Okay. Not that uncommon. Now you say there's 3 levels.
And so one system had a leaky coil.
A coil. Okay.
Yeah, leaky coil.
So you need a new coil and a pressure and a recharge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so even with home warranty, which does not cover the Freon.
Or the labor, I think.
They'll cover the labor and they'll cover the part, but not the Freon.
Not the Freon.
And we're on the old Freon system or whatever.
Yes, unfortunately.
That's way, way crazy expensive. I think it still cost me $1,200 or something like that to get it fixed. But, it's summer in North Carolina. Please just come fix my stuff.
Oh, you'll trade a kidney for that. Yeah. Do you want my firstborn? Yeah. So, okay, how do you find that HVAC person? Or you're
because
under
I had home
warranty.
warranty.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you call them and they
I
just
call
send
them,
out
and then they're just
somebody.
sending their guy out.
Okay. So you don't really have to do any searching. You just call your home warranty.
You just call them,
and then you said there was a second issue.
And so then I had a second issue with a different unit where the compressor failed. I guess they short out or something.
Yep.
Dead short compressor.
They have a life. Yeah, they all have a shelf life.
And these units are 15 years old. So
yeah, I mean, most people don't want to hear it, but the air conditioning box outside your house, it's really only got about a 10-year shelf life.
Yep.
So at 10 years and 1 day, it's on borrowed time, and any extra days is just a gift. So you should be mentally preparing to repair that, not the ductwork and your whole system, but that box on the outside. 10 years, that's about the shelf life.
Yep. So and I've been told that, and so I'm kind of aware of that, where it's anything more than 10, it's just be prepared.
Yeah. I'm on borrowed time myself on mine. Yeah, I just know it's just going to be a matter of time, and I'm glad when summer's coming to the end. Hopefully, it'll die in.
Winter. The compressor dies. I call home warranty company. They send somebody out. Needs a compressor.
Is that completely covered because of the warranty?
They cover parts and labor, but not Freon.
Oh, so once again, it still has to be recharged.
Yeah, because, of course, my argument is it's got Freon in it. Just give me my Freon back, right? And they're like, oh, it don't work that way. It's got to be clean, blah, blah, blah. So it was
even if it did work that way, they wouldn't tell you it worked that way.
Yeah. And, I did some research, and I think there's a cheaper equivalent for the old Freon, but they don't use it. I mean, I get this whole, kind of dog and pony, whatever, run around of,
and probably
why it's still going to cost you $1,200 to get a compressor done, because they're going to pay the compressor part, which by now we're talking, 2021.
Still summer.
We got supply chain issues. We've got it was actually during the winter.
Okay. Are your systems electric?
Yes.
And are they heat
They're
pump?
electric heat pumps, yes.
Okay, so for those who don't know the difference, if you have a heat pump, that one box on the outside of your house that looks like an air conditioner is actually both heating and air. So if it goes, it goes. The compressor, you losing everything. So you're even in the winter, unless you've got a gas fireplace or just love sweaters, you're still slave to that. And then I'm sure everybody listening in your in your company, or even if you don't have a company that has physical things that get moved around, you still went to buy something and it wasn't on the shelf. It was no different for people in my trade. I mean, it went from one trade to another. Like first, electricians couldn't get plastics, the plastic shortage. They couldn't get electrical boxes. And then when that got solved, HVAC couldn't get ductwork. And then when that got solved, plumbers couldn't get valves. And then when he could get valves, he couldn't get water heaters. And it was just one thing after another. And then lumber went from $2 a stud to $47 and a kidney for a stud, and then went back down. And it just went, this, that, and the third. So I'm sure your HVAC guy was like, oh, I've got a compressor on a ship in China that could be here tomorrow or in 18 months. Yeah, maybe
they're busy, and it's also when can we get parts? At least the technician that came out the second time, he was actually the same technician that came out the first. He did give me a bit of advice, because it was going to cost me, even though I have a warranty, it was going to cost me another $1,200 for the Freon. They were going to pay for the part, they'd pay for the labor. I got to pay for the old, very expensive Freon. So he did give me a bit of advice. He said, you can call the warranty company and ask for a buyout, because the way the warranty company works is if you have an issue with the system, and then they're going to fix it, and then, it's under warranty for like 60 or 90 days, that they'll cover parts and labor, and it doesn't count as an additional service call. But you have to pay for every service call that you make. So the upfront cost, I can't remember, it's like $75 or something, just for the guy to come out.
Yeah.
And so he said, you can ask for a buyout. So basically, the way that worked was, whatever money that the warranty company was going to pay to him for parts and labor, they would just pay to me, and then they would have no more responsibility for that system.
Okay.
And which I think ended up being $1,000 or $1,200. So, so basically I got a check from them, $1,000, and I was like, well, I'm just going to get a new system.
Right.
And so, I went and, started calling HVAC contractors in the area. And
you didn't want to use the gentleman that gave you the advice.
I did. Well, give me a quote.
Or he gave you a quote. He was one of the people. I
said, give me a quote on how much it costs to replace it. But
and you still went and called a few more.
And I'm going to call a few more. And I got time. It's winter. This unit's for the basement unit, which I'm not going to be down there in the winter.
Right.
It's
you
fine.
have the 2 other floor
I've
units.
got 2. I've got backup heat. I've got a kerosene heater. I got like a little decorative fireplace that if I need to,
like a gas powered one or whatever.
It's wood.
Oh,
it's
it is
wood burner.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
But I've got backup heat. I've got space heaters. I've got plenty of space. I'm not going to freeze to death. And so I called I think I called 7 different places.
That's a lot.
I had 5 people actually come out.
Okay.
I had 3 people actually give me quotes.
Okay.
Which I never could understand the people that actually came out, but then just never sent me a quote.
Yeah, that's very strange. If you're going to take the time to go out, yeah,
right. But it's happened.
Yeah,
before. But so I got 3 quotes, and I happened to pick the least expensive quote, but that wasn't. It was pretty close to second place, and then there was one company that was several $1,000s more expensive, but that wasn't my deciding factor. Was the price.
Did you end up using that home warranty company where the guy gave you the advice?
I did not,
actually.
Okay. I think that was one of those where I said, go ahead and send me a quote, and you never actually sent me a quote. So
interesting how he gave you the advice, hoping you would do that. And then when he got the opportunity to bid the work, where he probably would have made more money not going through a warranty company, he then did not take advantage of that.
They did not take advantage
very
of that.
Interesting.
But I picked the the local hometown company that had been in business for 50 years, and versus somebody across town, or
did they do a good job? Would you use them again?
I'd use them again. Yeah. I don't know that I would necessarily award them on a sole source contract. I mean, I would probably still, I would definitely call them to give them an opportunity to bid on, if I needed something else or one of the other units replaced.
So they were good enough to be in the running for future quotes, but you're not just like calling them on blind faith.
Well, because what I found is, the price quotes that I got varied pretty widely. I mean, it was a couple $1,000s. I mean, it may have been 40% difference of price.
Right.
And so then it's
significant when you're like, it's the same equipment, and it's like, well, why? Like, why?
Why is it? Why is it different? I need it to heat or cool. Right. It's, I equate it to, if you put gasoline in your vehicle, does it matter if it's $3 a gallon at Exxon or $3.10 at BP? Like, it's not like it's 10 cent better gas at BP. Yeah. It's all the same.
If it in fact is not watered down, the car can't tell. Gas is gas. It's going to just go.
Yeah. It doesn't know. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't care.
It just is. So, so it's kind of one of those things where, apples to apples, or, is Train 30% better than Carrier? Well, maybe, but probably not.
Right.
If that's the price difference.
And if it's warranted, it's warranted. So it's, gotcha.
Or, a Goodman system from 3 different vendors. Well, it's all Goodman, and which I think that's probably actually what it was and what I have. I can't remember.
So HVAC, is that the last thing that you did that was where you hired out a professional?
Yes.
Yeah. So sliding into more of the do-it-yourself category, What are some things that you've just been like, yeah, I can tackle this?
So I do like, minor repairs. Like I had an outlet that had an open ground. Well, some people are, freaked out by electricity. So, but for me, it's, you go cut the breaker off or cut the switch and you can like fix it.
Yeah.
I've hung some, hung ceiling fans in the house. Which, I mean, that's kind of some things that people they pay an electrician to do.
Oh, yeah. And an electrician will charge you a nice, pretty penny to hang that ceiling fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so I can kind of do that stuff. I did have a little area outside of my walkout basement that, it's kind of gravel and I had like some stepping stones and had like a little enclosed area that was storage for lawn equipment. And so I actually utilized that space to install a hot tub.
Okay.
So I'd opened that up and kind of made it a deck, but had taken the flooring up and reinforced the rafters, I guess the stringers.
Yeah, that the hot tub's sitting on the joists.
The joists, doubled up the joists to make it stronger, and reinstalled flooring, and then kind of built like a little deck out there, and so I kind of just made it like a entertainment area.
Gotcha. And so when you are like, okay, I could put a hot tub there, do you have? Obviously, you said you did some reinforcement, but do you like do some research on how much reinforcement, or you just kind of like, I got this?
Well, it was, I got a friend who's a general contractor and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And it's like, what do you think? He's like, that should work.
That should work.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, but that should work.
Yeah. Yeah, that should work. So like we didn't actually sit and figure it out, but it's like, you want to, it was like 2x8,
joists,
joists, 2x8 joists. Like we're only 2 feet off the ground, versus like the alternate location where I was going to put the hot tub was on a deck that's 12 feet off the ground.
All right, now you got to start really paying attention.
Yeah. So it's like it's 2 feet off the ground. We'll throw these joists up here. We'll double them up. Put decking boards on it. Should be fine.
Yeah,
should be fine.
Should be fine.
If it falls, it don't have far.
If it falls 2 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's probably going to die.
Yeah. It's like a raft ride then. Turn it into an event. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be a good event at the next barbecue. Have a little raft ride down there. All right, so you put in a hot tub.
So we did that.
You build a deck, right?
Yeah.
Some minor electrical you're not afraid of. What anything else on the list there?
That's really about it. Yeah. So.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I find it just absolutely fascinating that all 4 home buying experiences, I mean, there's almost nothing relatable to all of them other than your network. I mean, you've got different areas, different times in the housing market, different times in your life, different, requirements that you would need of the house. And I just think that, it's absolutely fascinating, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.